Welcome back to another episode of Capes and Tights, a pop culture and comic book podcast featuring myself, Justin Soderberg, and my co-host over there, Adam Morrisette. What's up, man?
Not much. How's everybody doing today?
I think I'm doing great. I think it's great. It's a beautiful day out. This weekend was beautiful. I think the world still sucks, but you know what? Let's talk some non-real things because movies are great and they take us away from the shitty world we live in. Not to get super depressing right off the top here. Yeah,
it's pretty well. We're a pop culture podcast, and pop culture's our way of escaping. So,
well, that's the thing. Man. I had a conversation with a buddy of mine down in Massachusetts a number of years ago, who's a father, and I told him, "Hey, man, did you watch the movie Prisoners?" And he's like, "Which one's that one?" I go, "It's the Hugh Jackman movie where the kid gets kidnapped, and he gets really upset. He thinks it's this one person, and kind of like goes after this one person, and all this." He goes, "I can't watch that, man. It's I have a kid, and it's too real." I'm like,
"Yep."
I have a son now. So there's certain things that are going to obviously strike a different chord with me, but there's certain things where I'm like, it's fake. It's not real. Mm-hmm. This is not based off of a true story. It's, it's fake. That's the whole point. We lose ourselves in these movies. Like it's the stupidest thing. And that's why the same thing whenever some comedian gets shit on for saying a joke that's kind of offensive, I'm like, that's the point. They're trying to make you laugh.
Yes.
They're
really trying to find the exact thing that is so offensive.
And the funny thing, yesterday on the way to work, this happened. It didn't happen. Yes, it's fake. He made the story up. It's all fake. So
it's acting. Yeah.
The thing about this today's kind of review and talk on this movie is that it's fake, but it's based loosely off of the writer and the producer and the director or whatever's life, because he was part of this. He worked at the store they're filming at. So today we're going to review and talk about the Clerks movie from 1994. And that's mainly, I mean, obviously, it's kind of a connection to pop culture, but it also is the fact that Kevin Smith, who created this movie, sold his comic book collection to help fund it. So I think there is still a connection, even if some of this is connected to the Comic-Con that's happening coming up. But the connection to selling your comic books to do this movie is a comic book connection enough to me, in my opinion. I mean, that's
absolutely. I mean, yeah. The Kevin Smith connection alone makes it like so in the comic book wheelhouse that there's no explanation needed.
Correct. I mean, he's written comic books. He did do a Daredevil run. He's done other stuff too. He was going to do the Howard the Duck show that was going to be on Hulu that got scrapped. But the movie was released. This Clerks movie was released October 19th, 1994. So actually we're right around the 27th anniversary of the film. It was filmed for $27,000. Okay.
Yep.
There is a little bit of an asterisk on there. When it got sold, the rights got sold for making the movie into an actual movie, not just an independent movie that's released small. $230,000 was put into the post production budget. Sure. So it really was $257,000 to make the movie, but it did bring in $3 million. So no matter how much was put in post, it still made well more than it actually cost to make the movie, which is great because Kevin Smith poured his heart and soul in this and basically maxed out all of his credit cards, borrowed money from his parents, and sold all of his comic books to make the movie. So I'm glad it was a success because, Adam and I kind of texted this morning too, was like, that's the dream, really. I mean, let's be honest. Yep. Like you put your heart and soul into something to make it and it becomes a success. That's awesome. So so we'll get more into that obviously as we talk further.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's Rotten Tomatoes, 89% on both critic and audience score, which is awesome. And a 7.7 out of 10 on IMDb, which is a pretty good, reputable score on IMDb, in my opinion. It was written, directed, and produced by Kevin Smith and edited by Kevin Smith. Edited and produced by his buddy Scott Mosier, who they're still good friends. They actually have podcasts together still, too, which is pretty cool. But it starred Brian O'Halloran as Dante Hicks, Jeff Anderson as Randall Graves, Jason Mewes as Jay, Kevin Smith as Silent Bob, and Marilyn Gigliotti, I believe it said, as Veronica. There's obviously more people in there. There's actually 50 actors or actresses in the show. Two of them had acted in a movie or TV show before this filming of this movie. Two. That's crazy. It's fascinating. Yep. But that's the gist of what this movie we're talking about, Clerks. It has become a cult classic. And actually, before we get into actually more of it, it's again such a cult classic movie that the film was actually considered a landmark in independent filmmaking. In 2019. It was actually put into the National Film Registry at the Library of Congress, who deemed it culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant, which is fascinating as all hell, because they have some pretty raunchy and funny things in this movie that you think it's actually in the Library of Congress. Is hilarious, honestly.
I have to agree with the decision. I mean, Eddie, we'll get into it now, but that it should be in the Library of Congress.
It's true. And so Adam and I talked back and forth this morning a little bit off before recording. We texted, obviously we're friends. We also text obviously about other stuff too, but we're like, okay, we're recording today. Let's talk about this. Adam has never seen this movie. This is the first time Adam had seen this movie. And I'm glad. And I said when we were talking last week on the podcast that I'm actually happy about that, because it's kind of cool to bring the aesthetic of you not seeing the movie multiple times. I've now seen the movie multiple times. I will be honest. I said that before we started recording. It was probably about 5 years ago I watched the movie for the first time. And so it still is pretty fresh, but it's cool to see your first eyes on it. I mean, the first experience watching it was
absolutely
cool.
Yeah. And I have no good reason for not watching it. I wasn't doing the like people like it, so I'm going to be cool and reject it. I wasn't like, I just never did. And when you brought this up, I was like, that's going to be interesting because it is such a cultural touchstone for so many people. So yeah, coming in at it 41 years old after a couple years of pandemic and rethinking life and goals, it started out real funny. And then by the end, I just kind of felt horrible about every decision that I've made in my life. And now here we are. That was only like an hour ago. So
yeah. And that's the funny thing is Adam watched this morning, which is great. I like the freshness of it too. I watched it on Friday night and we're recording this on a Monday, but like, so it does have that freshness still to me. It's not like I'm trying to say I watched this 5 years ago and now I'm talking about the movie. The other difference is Adam and I also work in the service industry, or we have worked in the service industry. So this movie strikes a chord personally in that aspect too, because we, it's so funny watching it going, oh my God, there's customers that walk in last week at Orno Brewing Company that were like that. To open the movie when the guy is trying to buy cigarettes and the guy trying to tell him not to buy cigarettes to stand there. I'm like, that happens all the time. The Bangor Orno Brewing Company location, you're sitting there and someone's like, oh, I'll take a tubular. And someone goes, ugh, it tastes like grass. And it's like, dude, let this person order what they want. Don't what the hell are you doing? And it's just, and come to find out he's a gum selling person, which is funny as too. But like that it happens all the time. People talk to other customers to convince them not to get something at your own establishment. You're like, what the hell are you doing?
Absolutely. And I think both of us too, when we talk, everybody I think knows that we've bartended in for a long time and you manage a brewery and front of house, but we've also both worked the counter retail jobs.
Yes,
too.
Exactly.
And that's a whole nother ball. I mean, it overlaps in just about every way that sucks. But we've both done that too. And so, yeah, I think, coming at this movie now versus say when it came out and I'd never worked anywhere, I would have been like, huh? But it still hits on a lot of things that are real close to home.
And part of it has to do, so one of the things I always say about my management style is one of the things that I think I get across so much when I manage people is I did the job. So it's not like I was hired out of the blue I remember the Office episode when Charles Miner gets hired at Thunder Mifflin, and he had been selling steel all along. And so the people were like, do you even know what paper's made out of? Because he hadn't been in the paper industry. So when I talk to people and say, hey, you need to pour this beer this way, or you need to do it this way, it's like, well, part of them go, okay, he's the boss. But part of it also is he's done this. He's worked in the trenches. He's been there during busy nights. He knows how to do this. That's what I also get out of this. Kevin Smith made this movie because he worked at that specific quick stop groceries. So he knew those are based on true story, not true story, but like exaggerated versions of true stories of what happened at that shop. So it's like, it's believable because it's real. Like it's not a documentary. It
wouldn't have worked if it was filmed on a set, or even if it was just a generic storefront that they rented. It would not have worked at all. Because that's like I said, by the end, what really stuck me is it all felt so real. Like even like you said, just down to like the store that's kind of it's disorganized and like they could do better, and that just all feels real because they work at a convenience store.
Well, it's the thing. I mean, when I always talked about people asking about certain restaurants that are local mom and pop shop restaurants to make a franchise or add another location, you're not, especially an older one. Let's say you're in Bangor area. From the Bangor area, you'll know Gagan's Brew Pub in downtown Bangor, near downtown Bangor. That restaurant opened in 1975 as an Irish pub. So for them to add a second location, it'd be fake if they tried to make it look like the 1975 pub atmosphere. If Patty's tried to open another location and try to get that vibe out of their pub, and they only opened a few years ago, not that long ago, and to try to duplicate that is hard. So they have in other times they've made a set in Louisiana, but it's based off of that store specifically. But like having that ability to actually say, no, this is exactly what the store looks like.
Yeah.
Exactly to the day. I mean, when they stopped filming at 4:00 in the morning, 2 hours later, the store was opening and doing business in that exact same store. And so that was the realistic part of it. And fun facts that I think everybody who's a big fan of Clerks know, it was filmed at night, like I mentioned.
Yep.
So Kevin Smith worked 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. and then he'd close the store, and then they'd put the equipment up and they'd set it all up and they'd film at night. He'd stop filming at 4:00 in the morning. He'd go home and get a few hours of sleep and then come back, open the store up at 6:00 in the morning and work the full day. Yep. And he was able to do that because the owner of the store said, you're more than welcome to use our store to film. You just cannot close the store. And so they filmed, he basically wore himself out for like 2 months filming this movie only during the night. And that's the reason why the I assure you we're open sign is on the outside, because they had to keep the metal things down so that you wouldn't know at 2:00 in the afternoon on the day of this movie's taking place on that it was actually nighttime.
Right.
It's fascinating. Those are the things that like I love hearing those stories, because it's like, again, I texted Adam earlier and was like, dude, it's like if you and I sold our comic books, Adam sold his NFTs, we sold the personal collectibles that we have, and opted to go film at Orno Brewing Company at night to make a movie about working at Orno Brewing Company and hope it was successful. That's what he did. And that's why I think, to me, it's why I like when Adam's like, do you like the movie Clerks? I'm like, I like the idea of Clerks, like the whole premise. But then again, if you watch it and see it and you have a personal connection to it, it's pretty cool. I think it's awesome. We don't like to go through and like point A, point B, whatever, but I have some fun things. I actually printed it because I wanted to be like 1994. And I have on paper. I mean, I could have used a typewriter if I wanted to, right?
It's true. I know, that's why I went for the Wizard magazines. I could find nothing that felt 90s to me, but Wizard magazine felt very 90s to me.
Another like I said, I'm probably gonna pull up a bunch of fun facts just because those are the kind of things you like to listen to on something like this. Is Kevin Smith was actually cast himself. So I wrote a note down in the middle of the movie saying, I'm glad Kevin Smith is not the lead. You know what I mean? When you make your own movie, it's probably cheaper and easier, and you want to get it right, you make yourself the lead. Atlanta. Have you seen the show Atlanta on
I have not.
But that's what's his name? Donald Glover is the guy who created that show. He's Childish Gambino, the rapper. He is the man, or is he the manager of the rapper? He's not the rapper, and I've always gave that respect because I'm like, he is a rapper, so he could just play the rapper on the show, but he's the manager of the rapper. Let someone else play the rapper. I've always given that as respect to that, so he's not the star of the show.
Right.
However, I guess when I'm reading up and looking things up, Kevin Smith was going to be Randall, and he decided not to. And Randall has all the best lines, and that's because it was going to be Kevin Smith in the movie. And so it's kind of funny. I'm glad he wasn't. Kevin Smith actually only has one line, when Silent Bob speaks at the very end, something very profound, and you're just like, what? And that's the only line he has in the entire movie, which is awesome. It makes me some respect for Kevin Smith on that one.
Yep. And I imagine too, now looking in hindsight, is if he had acted, he wouldn't have been actively directing, and that could have changed just the whole feel of the film too. I don't want to just go through these two, but so is there something specifically that comes out in the movie that you were like, the joke that always comes back to me is the 37 dicks joke, like the one that he talks to his girlfriend about. Veronica and him are talking back and forth about how many people you slept with and all that stuff, and he goes, 36, you suck 36 dicks, and he goes, including me? She's like, well, 37. And then the customer is standing right there, and that just reminds me of actual experiences. You're having not so appropriate conversations with your coworker, and there's a customer standing there, and you're trying to kind of like half-heartedly still have that conversation without the customer really knowing what's going on. But then Randall or Dante looks at the customer and goes, she sucked 37 dicks. And the guy goes, in a row? We won't name our coworker's name, but we do have one person who is the queen of comments where everybody else goes, oh,
yep.
And then she turns around and there's a line of like 18 people. So yeah, again, immediately relatable.
Yes, exactly. But I was just like, in a row. The funny thing about that joke is it's one of the jokes that if I ask people if you've seen Clerks, that's the joke that comes up a lot of times is the 37 in a row. The guy who says in a row, I guess, in the movie is the guy that actually got the movie to be released by Miramax. He got sent the script, and he was reading the script, and he got to that line, and he immediately brought it to the people above him and said, "We need to make this movie. We need to produce this movie or put this movie out." And he got actually to say the line in the movie, which is pretty awesome. Kevin Smith doesn't inhale on the movie. He didn't actually smoke any of those cigarettes on the movie. He smokes a lot. Silent Bob just sits there and smokes cigarettes
all the time.
It was his idea and his viewpoint for the smoking thing we talked about just off the top of this, which is basically trying to convince them not to smoke. I guess after this movie, he smoked 2 packs a day for a number of years. I'm like, well, yeah, I get the taste. Yeah, you taste for it on your mouth, and you're just like, okay, now I'm smoking. Now I believe he doesn't smoke anymore. He smokes a lot of weed, and he's vegan. So he has turned his life around because he almost died. He had the had that heart attack right after he did a filming of a comedy show, and he almost died because of his health and stuff like that. So they basically said, so he went vegan with his daughter's vegan, and so he eats vegan and doesn't smoke. He smokes a lot of weed, which again, not gonna kill you. But I think that the biggest thing to me, I guess, a takeaway on this movie, I like the movie. I think it's a culturally, it does fit, like we said, it does fit culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. The conversation, like that's to me, it's like it's just basically a movie of people talking. And I think that's one of those things that I also pick back on comic books. That one of my favorite things about comic books are the ones where like Wolverine's having a conversation with Cyclops at a table, having a beer, and just talking. And it's like, if you can get me to read you and like your book because they're just having a conversation, it goes wonders to me. And I think that the entire movie is literally just basically Dante and Randall having conversations. And obviously, again, more relatable. They had the conversation about Star Wars, which movie was better. And they had the whole argument about how like independent contractors on the Death Star.
Another one that's a one we hear a lot too. Like that's one thing that struck me listening is like, I know so much of the movie just from the cultural references, even though I've never seen it. And that one is one that I have heard because I love Star Wars, but I feel like that's kind of where it's trendy now to do the rebels were terrorists. And, I feel like that kind of entered the pop culture mindset, like there pretty much.
And that's like I said, you have those stupid, if you're into pop culture, if you're a nerd like you and I are, we have these conversations at work, and you just put it in a movie. Nowadays, you think if someone tries to do that in a movie, they're like, okay, what's going to happen? What's the funny thing that comes out of this? What's who does someone come in and get punched? No, they're just having a discussion, an argument about Star Wars that we all have in normal day. And it's not going to strike a chord with everybody, but it's going to strike a chord with someone like myself or like you, who both like Star Wars and have had those conversations while doing that job. Maybe not at a gas station, but just in general, dealing with the customers and so on. And then the guy comes over, the contractor's like, I choose jobs with my heart.
Which is great, because it's that same, like we've done that a million times where you're talking and then you're kind of like, oh, that was a dumb conversation that you were listening to. And then the person's like, oh, no. I'm totally interested.
Yes. And I'm going to speak to it like it's not fake. I mean, Star Wars is not real. And there was, hypothetically, if you think about it, there was no contractors, electricians, or plumbers on the Death Star. You never see any of them. They don't exist in the script or in the storyline, but you use it to relate to real life things, which is obviously you can't build it without people. And so now you start to realize, oh, I just got my house built and I had contractors there and everything. If someone were to blow my house up, they would all die. And so you're like trying to, it's like, it's fake. Again, back to the whole beginning part. It's fake. It's not really. But having that conversation to come customer walking over and have a legitimate argument and discussion saying, hey man, this is real. And it's like, it's not real. It's fake. But I guess I mentioned that Kevin Smith is a star, coworker argument. I thought it was funny. So Randall is the person who runs the movie store next door. And I love how he showed up late and didn't care. And the person waiting out front, he's talking to her about like, I bet I write that movie before you do. And she has no idea that he works there, which is funny. The fact that he just leaves the store, locks it, and goes next door, again, hilarious. Because how many times did you're like, oh, I'm hungry, I'll just lock the bar up, no one's here. Lock the bar up and want to go somewhere. You want to do that. You can't, obviously, but you want to do that. And he just does it and doesn't care. and there's no one around, obviously, to give a crap because they're both working by themselves. But the fact that he does that is funny because in the future, we talked on the podcast. I talked to Paul about how I watched Comic Book Men. That's Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith's comic book store in, was it New Jersey, called Secret Stash? And Jason Mewes worked there at the very beginning, and he would tell a customer, "Hey man, can you watch the store for a second? I got to go run and buy a pack of cigarettes." And he would leave the store with some random customer in the store, just looking at comic books. He'd go down the street, pick up some cigarettes, and then Kevin Smith would walk in, or someone else would walk in and go, "Hey, isn't Jason supposed to be here?" The guy would just go, "Yeah, he's down the store getting cigarettes." He'd just leave the store, or he'd lock it and then go do something and come back. And Kevin Smith had to be like, "Dude, you can't do that anymore. Like, you can't do that. You can't just leave someone in the store with no one there." And especially now because of, their popularity. But it's just kind of funny. I was like, it's funny how that was not, the movie was created before that shop opened. So it's not like that was created based on Jason Mewes' character, like who he is as a person. But it's kind of funny how it did relate later on in life that he actually would do something like Randall would do in the movie by leaving. Him going to another store to rent a good movie because he works at a sucky movie store. That's funny.
That's hilarious.
It's like I ordered, I like our food at Warner Brewing Company. Love it, but I eat it all the time. So on Saturday, I ordered a pizza for delivery. And someone's like, "What, you don't like the food here?" And I wanted to use that line.
Right.
No, yeah, we do make food here, but I wanted to get good food.
Right.
I don't want the crappy food. I want the good food. And it's like, no, we don't make pizza. God, so I got pizza, But the ending was not original. Like, so the original ending, and it's like, so you like the ending to the point where it brings that. So you said something at the very beginning about how it, like, you brought reality to you or brought sadness. What was that?
Sure. Oh, I think, I mean, we can shift into this for a second, which is that, it's such the classic kind of movie where I just feel like none of the composite parts are really great on their own, but it comes together at its time to be something very meaningful. And I think the part that stands out is, I mean, clearly we can do all the, like, it's not subtle. Clearly the guy's name is Dante. So we've got a bit of a theme of purgatory going on here. Randall's a bit of the Virgil character leading him through purgatory. So, I mean, we've got all that kind of primes us to say, like, there's a bit more going on here, but there is a really, like, fun existential argument going on there of that just, Dante's created this whole reality that holds him back from doing what he wants to do. And not a single part of it is anything but his choice. And I mean, Randall even says, like, just leave and go to another shitty store and work there. They'll hire you. Right. Because the reality is that's the whole point. Dante, the reality is what he doesn't want to acknowledge, which is you've made every one of these decisions. You have made all of the choices that have led you to where you don't want to be. And now here we are. And then it finally ties up in that thing of, like, every time he's like, "I wasn't even supposed to be here today." That doesn't mean anything. You are here today. Right. It is what does that mean? And so at the end, it is kind of, and that's not just you or me. I think so many people see that and are like, crap, because we create these things to justify our poor decisions and then blame it on everybody else. And that's never fun to acknowledge. And it's great because you can see what's going on with Kevin Smith at the time. And he's saying, like, I want to do this thing, probably saying, but I can't because look where I am. And I do this and the system oppresses me. And if I made more money at my clerk job, I could have done this years ago. And that's all crap, because ultimately he can just quit, sell everything he owns, max out all his credit cards, make a film, see what happens. It might have failed epically, but I guarantee you he would have been way happier that he did it.
And that's
just in general in life.
And that's one of those things I always say to people is, if you're not happy, why are you still there? Like in general life, like if you're not happy in a relationship, why are you still in it? If you're not happy at work, why are you still there? If you're not happy in the town you live in, why are you still go there? Why are you doing what you're doing if you're not happy? And obviously there are some reasons you have to fight through some things to do other things, but in overall scheme of things, if you can go somewhere else, then go somewhere else. And so it is that relation to, I love that I'm not even supposed to be here today, because you're right. And I there's times you do the opposite. Like yesterday, or I was talking to Adam off recording, that at work on Saturday, the internet wasn't working correctly. And I thought to myself, I'm glad I was there that day, because Cassie would have been even more in the dark than I would have been. Cassie's my tasting room manager, and she doesn't know as much about the internet and what network that I do. I know about it, but I don't know all of it. But it was like, as I was not working, I was like, I'm glad I was here. I'm glad I was wasn't because I wasn't supposed to be there on Saturday. Saturday, it was my alternating Saturday. It was normally my Saturday off. And so, but I was like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm glad I was there. So it's kind of that opposite aspect of that. I do love the I'm supposed to be there because it's happened. I've called you. You've gone into work the day and it was busy as hell, or something stupid happened, or some customer pissed you off, and in your mind you think that like, I was just gonna be at home playing video games tonight. I'm not even supposed to be here today, and that's what I love about that line. The movie ending wasn't originally that. The movie ending was that Dante was actually going to get shot. Actually, it was filmed that way. It was filmed with him getting shot. Because again, it was supposed to put a cap on the idea of I'm not even supposed to be here today. And if he wasn't there today, he would have been shot. Someone else would have been shot. And so the other thing they wanted to do was similar to Spike Lee's movie back in the day, where it was a comedy, but it had a serious ending. And that's kind of what he wanted to do. Kevin Smith said, though, if he didn't film it the way he filmed it, the new way, the way that you see it when you watch it online, is there may have been never any other View Askew Productions, his company productions. Very because likely. Dante and all of the characters basically play them. It's one universe. It's the first to us. It's one of the first universes like Star Wars, and it was like there was a View Askew universe, which basically was Clerks, and then it was Mallrats, and there was Dogma, and Chasing Amy, and it goes further now. Clerks 2, and it goes all the way to Tusk and Yoga Hosers and all the really, honestly, pretty bad movies that Kevin Smith made over the years are all technically, if you think about it, all in the same universe. And Dante Hicks shows up again in Clerks 2, and Jay and Silent Bob have their own movies and so on. So it's like if there was been a murder at that shop of Dante, there may never been a future film, which is kind of crazy to think about. There was
it's just one of those inadvertent, I mean, that ending for me at least ended up being great because like I said, it all to me in the end kinds of comes down, it just doesn't matter because you are here today, so you're and nothing else would have ever happened. I mean, from one perspective, so yeah, that would have really changed the outcome of that a lot because I liked, for me, and I'm sure it's different for everybody, I liked that takeaway of like that of really exploring like this existential idea of it's just your choices, which, you know, I mean, that's not me, that's the oldest philosophical argument that's still going on, is telling people like, no, that's your choice. Nope, that was your choice. People hate it. They hate it. I hate it. So like I said, if I'm still thinking about that now, I'd say it was a successful film.
Yes. And the funny, Randall and Dante in the movie don't smoke weed, but they have this impression that they're both like these stoner people. At least Randall has this impression of this stoner person and they have such existential and such deep conversation that like it seems so weird that these two people who work at a video rental store and someone works at a convenience store have these deep conversations, and Randall says these very profound things that you'd be like, what the hell? And then he talks about transvestite porn. And it's like this big, swinging in the needle of the thing. At the very end, he says these pretty substantial and existential thoughts. And then previous to that, he was watching transvestite porn on the TV. And it's just kind of funny how like this swinging a pendulum on the whole movie.
And honestly is one that tracks again. I mean, I think I just quick disclosure. I'm like, I thought I was going to do academia. That was like when I was younger, I got my master's degree in history. I thought I was going to go on, ended up not being my jam at all. So I've had a lot of great discussions in classroom and university settings, but I got to say some of the best ones I've ever had have been with coworkers and patrons at the bars that I've worked at, because some of them are professors, some of them are homeless, some of them work the same job I do, they just got off. And so that part of it, I have experienced that, where like I am literally making dick jokes with a guy for an hour. Then we have like the most profound discussion I've ever had. And then we go to boob jokes.
Yes.
And, and that's how the industry is. It's why I think it's partially what draws people to it,
And I think there's the Dante, like, I feel like if you had this, like, if you wrote a book on personalities, you could have the, different names for each personality. Like there's a Dante, there's a Randall, there's a Jay, there's a Silent Bob. There's all these different characters you could be from Clerks, because Dante and Randall are obviously different people. Dante is more like what you and I would be. we'd have these horrible kind of funny conversations or deep conversations you wouldn't have with a customer, but you wouldn't say it to the customer. You'd be very happy, smiling, whatever. You turn around and you're like, oh my God, whereas Randall just says it all to the customer. He does what we all want to do. He does the spitting in the customer's face of the water. He does the telling them dirty jokes or being very offensive to them. Things that we like, this customer's pissed me off. I wish I could say it to his face. Randall would do. And so it's that double siding of that. When he's in the videos, when Randall's in the video store, he's ordering all the porn.
It's one of my favorite scenes.
I was, like I said, looking up some things afterwards. I love the scene. I laugh so hard because he just goes on and on and on, and it's just funny. And then at very end, he asks about the movie that she wanted, which is not a pornography movie. He wouldn't film that with the woman, the actress, and the kid in the room. So when that was filmed, they shot back and forth. And as he started reading the titles, they made her leave the room because he would not read these titles in front of her. But the funny thing is that when she acted her reaction, she wanted to read them. So she had a piece of paper with all of them read, so that her reactions are actually the reactions of what she would have reacted if he read it to her, which I thought was funny as hell. But all these different porn titles, he just goes on and on and on. And what was the movie you wanted?
And again, it goes back to that, like you said, you've got a couple like actual professional actors. Yes. And even the ones, that you have are probably doing a lot of stage and like university film stuff. And if you're not experienced, and all of a sudden this guy's like, hey, I want you to say all of these horrible, remember, this is 94 too, pornographic titles. I mean, this is pre-real internet porn era, like this caps that. And so it probably was like, I mean, I would have been like, no,
I'm not reading this. But that was the funny thing. So he wouldn't do that with her in the room. Jason Mewes, the dancing scene with Jay was dancing out in front of the shop. He wouldn't do that with anybody else on set. He made people leave the set. They left the camera rolling and he danced. And it's like, that's so funny because I'm like, that was the time where Jason Mewes was high as hell all the time. And so my thought process, like he was so high, would he even realize what was going on? And he just danced. I mean, it was the funniest thing that he didn't want people watching him dance on a movie. And he was, I think he was funny as hell. I think that Jason Mewes character, Jay from Jay and Silent Bob, is honestly perfect. I think Silent Bob's perfect. The characters going in and out, his mom is actually the milkmaid, the person who always wants to find the, and these are like, that's the other part, these are real things. The egg one is funny. The person trying to find the perfect egg carton thing. Obviously that's more exaggerated than it was realistic, but the people who actually will pull gallons of milk out of the cooler to find them all, it happens. And so he got Kevin Smith was able to get his mom to do that scene. Speaking of comic book men, Walt Flanagan, the guy who runs the Jay and Silent Bob Secret Stash comic book store, who was one of the leads on that show, did 4 different roles in this movie, and he was the egg person. He was the person who was he was the offended customer at one point, and he was 2 other characters too, which is kind of funny because if you just shoot them in different areas or just use their voices, you don't know they could be the same character.
And I think that egg scene is a perfect one. I just had a random thought on that, where like that scene could not be in the movie, and it wouldn't change it in any way. At the same time, like I feel like almost any part of that movie could be taken out and it wouldn't really matter, except it also then wouldn't work. I think that's what keeps sticking with me, having just seen it this morning, is like my brain keeps going like, man, that was really like not well organized, and like some of the acting was good, but some of it was not good. And I don't know that there was but at the end I was like, I see what you were doing though, which is way more than I can say for most movies, where I'm like, that looked amazing. I don't think you said anything. So I really like it. Justin was there for my roller coaster of text this morning when I was like, kind of like, what? And then I texted him and I was like, okay, I get it. That was brilliant. Yeah. Like that was my morning.
And part of it's the whole like titles of scenes too was different, that you don't see a lot in movies, where it's like it almost like had each scene had a title to it, so you knew something different was going to happen or something was substantial in that section. I like your idea about that something could not be there in that movie and still have it technically work, but not. Like, did they need to go to the funeral? Like, did it has to be there? The only reason they went was to make the point at some point that he didn't want to say that you wouldn't break rules there for other reasons, but would break it for other. Like, it's like He played
Right.
hockey, but that was a scheduled event. And he told me he was going to be here at noon and he didn't show up. So I played hockey on the rooftop and that was
Right.
okay to close the store. Oh, it was a funeral. That's okay to close the store. But to
Right.
go run an errand or go do something else, or like you want to go rent another video, that's not okay to rent, you know? And so there's that, the
Yep.
only reason the hockey thing even was there, I think, and the funeral was even there for that was
Yep.
to make a point later on in the movie that he was able to do it for his own personal reasons, but not for other reasons, like to
Yep.
close the store.
What? Yeah, exactly. And and then we get the sense of the manager. Like we never see the manager. He talks to him. He's in Vermont, like skiing or something. And so we know, right? Like the thing is too, like he could do whatever he wants. That guy does not care. He could close the store all day long. That guy just doesn't want to be there. And so even his thing of like, I have to, no, that guy doesn't even want you calling him. Like,
and we have that you were that as an employee, you were there, you do your job, you go home. And so like Randall being that best employee possible, he was trying to do the right thing. He's like, I came in, I'm here, I'm doing the right thing. And so, but like the guy, it's that time of someone taking advantage of someone. Obviously the manager was taking advantage of Randall. Randall was going to be there. Yes. He knew Randall would do the right thing. He knew he wouldn't close up shop and leave. He knew he was going to do everything right.
And this has happened a million times before.
Yes. And he doesn't leave. He's being taken advantage of, and he still stays and does the job. And so, whereas the opposite side of it is that Randall just comes in and does what he wants and leaves and comes and goes and leaves and comes and goes. It doesn't really matter. But Dante is the employee that we all want as managers because he will do the right thing. Yep. But then there's other managers who do the same thing to employees because they do the right thing. They don't like if the owner, say that it wasn't a manager on the phone that he was talking to the owner of the shop, and the guy, Dante says, okay, I'm leaving to go to, the stop down the street. He'd lose someone, or can I go work at the rental store? He'd probably say no, even though it might be a upgrade at the rental store because Randall's working there and he's causing ruckus. He doesn't want to lose him at the quick shop. So there's that, like he's going to do the right thing, but there are people who take advantage of people, and he was being taken advantage of, and he didn't quote unquote see it as much. Like he just, that's my job. I got to clock in, I got to do the thing, and I got to do it. It's the way it is. And
he's an interesting character.
And he, so that was based off of Kevin Smith was like, Dante is Kevin Smith in that scene. And obviously this is exaggerated, right? We talked about that. This is not like Kevin Smith, I don't think, left in the middle of a shift to go to a funeral. I don't know if that's an actual legitimate thing. But and then Randall was based on his friend Brian Johnson, who actually was the person who worked the rental store, who did a lot of those things about locking the door and going over next door and just hanging out and so on. Brian Johnson was also on Comic Book Man for a little while there as well. He has his own podcast too with Walt Flanagan, who was in the movie. And he does, I think it's called Tell Him Steve Dave. That's their podcast. And then Brian O'Halloran has one too. But so it's like they're based off of real characters, based off of real people. RST Video, I guess the name after the first names of the wife and the husband and the daughter or the kid of the people who own the two shops are R, S, and T. And so they call it RST Video as an honoring to them. I don't know what the actual video store is called, but they called it RST Video on the movie. So it was filmed in black and white because of lighting, right? Because it was cheaper to do in black and white because you don't have to worry about the lighting in the rooms. You can do all that pretty easily. It was filmed at the store. Again, he probably, I'm guessing what I've heard is he did it for free. The guy was like, as long as you clean up after yourself and as long as you do it at night and don't close the shop is yours. And the biggest, I think the biggest cost of the whole thing was the soundtrack.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because I mean, Soul Asylum's in there. There's a lot of these big artists that come out that there's songs specifically in that movie. There, like that's an expensive soundtrack to have when you have an independent film with A-list artists at the time, grunge era artists. And he says, I think it was one of those things. It's like the soundtrack was fairly out of that $230,000 I talked about. Right. A lot of that might have been the actual soundtrack cost to pay with the rights to have those songs in the movie. But again, it was shot well. Like it doesn't look like, some people shoot movies nowadays. You're like, okay, someone shot that movie at their house. Like you could tell. Yeah. It was shot well enough that it looked legit for 1994. The story was well enough to get by as an independent film. And the characters were great written characters themselves. Yeah. And I think part of it is the story that goes behind it with selling the comic books, making it for almost no budget. and doing something and just saying, you know what, screw it, I'm going to do this, is it also made the movie. If this movie just came out tomorrow and shot to look like an independent film on a low budget,
Right.
it might not actually stick as long as this movie did.
Yeah. I think that gets too, that's just that, like, how it's weird how it ends up working. But again, even that, the black and white, that almost little bit of graininess to it. But like, again, it's one of those ones where I'd be like, I'd like to ask Kevin Smith. I'm sure a million people have, because it's been 20 years. But like, again, with that kind of not so subtle Dante's Inferno theme going on. I mean, the titles of the chapters are Dante's Inferno. They're the circles of hell, blah, blah, blah. Man, that black and white is, I mean, there couldn't be anything better for purgatory. I mean, purgatory is, it's not hell. It's just often a very bland, monochrome, horrible existential thing. And that's, I don't know, that's what the film is to me. In the end, it was funny, and it was also like a horrible existential film.
And they did it in black and white when they shot Clerks 2. They could have at least easily gone through and done that, mailed it home, and just like, okay, we're going to do this in black and white too, because the first one was done in black and white, but they didn't. It was full color, it was full production. And I like that, because again, it's that whole trying to reproduce something that's not real and making it look like it was supposed to be real. You lose something with that. And so I'm glad that was the only black and white film that they created was Clerks 1. Every other one since then has been full color, full production. It's usually on studio lots and things like that, not doing it like the original film. They have gone back and filmed other times there for other things, but I believe in the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and Jay and Silent Bob reboot, they did end up at the Quick Stop, but I think it was actually a remake of the outside of the building in the studio. This is the lot they were at. Clerks 3 comes out next year. They just finished wrapping the film of Clerks 3.
I just saw that.
And so that's pretty fascinating. And so Clerks 2, the other thing is they didn't go back to the Quick Stop in Clerks 2, basically. It was shot at a fast food restaurant. So it's like they went and continued on with it, but didn't actually continue on with the actual story of the Quick Stop place. So again, I think that Kevin Smith is honestly a genius, because he does...
Yeah.
He makes films he wants to make. It's the same thing. People come in at a brewing company. You're like, hey, Asa, how come you don't make this beer anymore? I'm like, I make beer I want to drink. Like, I'm not going to make beer that I don't want to drink anymore. Like, I'm just not going to do it. Like, it's every once in a while he makes a beer that, okay, whatever. If people like it, I'll make it. But he wants to be able to drink his own product. And so Kevin Smith makes movies that he wants to make. And I give him so much credit for that, because movies that he makes are weird as hell sometimes. But it's because he wants to make it, and he has the ability to make it. At least as long as it pays for itself, he doesn't care. He does not care. I mean, he did a movie with Yoga Hosers, had these little Nazi bratwursts that were called Bratzies. And he did one that has Justin Long was in it, that he became a walrus made out of human skin. It's the weirdest shit out there.
That movie still haunts me to this day.
Tosca's fucking crazy. And so but he does what he wants. And that's the thing. It's what I said when I posted on Instagram a while back about doing these podcast things, was like, you just got to do it. You just got to get out there and just take the risk and do it. And that's what he did with Clerks, and what he's done with everything else since then. Honestly, one of my favorite movies he's ever done is Dogma. I don't know if you've seen Dogma, but Dogma is freaking hilarious.
I have seen Dogma.
And the fact that he's been able to get like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon to star in movies for them, and multiple Ben Affleck appearances in his films.
Oh yeah.
And so he's also gone on to do Cop Out. He did Zack and Miri Makes a Porno. So he's done some films there with big budgets. He's gone on to make TV shows. He just did the new Masters of the Universe TV show on Netflix, the animated He-Man show. So people give him the keys to shit, and he does it. And so he's obviously proven he can make movies, direct and produce movies, and write things. And so it all started here. And I don't know if it's just because the way the movie was shot, for the budget it was shot for, the timing it came out. I don't know about why. Like I said, I can't tell you why specifically to a T why it's become such a hit over the years.
I think that's, man, I almost want to say that's super classic for films that, stick in the cultural mindset. I mean, if we're like, I always use this as an example, probably one of my favorite movies of all time is Star Wars. It was a product of its time and a lot of factors, because everything else stripped away. There's a lot about that movie that's not good. No.
Yes, exactly.
But in the end, what it comes together as is, I mean, it doesn't matter anymore. It defines film. So there's no more argument.
Let's be honest with the whole cultural significance is the fact that the Comic-Con that's happening at the Bangor Mall on October 1st through the 3rd, the number one guest, the headlining guest of this show is Brian O'Halloran, Jeff Anderson, and Jason Mewes is a Clerks reunion show. This is only the second or third time they've been together at a Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And the fact that they can headline a Comic-Con of guests that these people were in this movie that they got paid almost nothing to make back in the day. Now they're actually being able to make an entire living off of it. I mean, the number of times that Brian O'Halloran's played Dante Hicks in a movie. If you look at his history of his movies, it's 75% of his movies he's Dante Hicks in. And so it's just crazy that these characters have lived and stood the test of time and been in multiple movies and done all this stuff over the years that he can actually sign an autograph now because someone wants to meet Dante Hicks. It's fascinating. The fact that small town in New Jersey, to make this independent film to the point where now 27 years later, you're playing Dante Hicks. I guarantee you people have to say to him, can you please say I'm not even supposed to be here today?
Of course. Yep.
Oh, speaking of that, the only other thing I love about the thing is that the sign on the door or the register says, if you plan to shoplift, please let us know.
Please let us know. Yeah. No, it's great. And like I said, I went full 180. I was about 30 minutes into it. And like I told you, I've seen Dogma. I've seen other Kevin Smith movies. I was like, I don't know about this, but by the end, now I'm like, I might have to watch it again today.
Yeah.
To digest it. Cause I was watching it thinking of the podcast. And now I just want to think about the whole, I don't know, crux of the movie, which is now bothering me immensely.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Not bothering in a bad way.
As we get to finish this up here too, the other things just funny. They're like, it's almost like stand-up comedy jokes. And Kevin Smith is a good stand-up comedy too, because it's just like things that somewhat lead into each other, but they're not actually connected in a way. Like I watch the stuff that happens in the movie, that when he picks up the litter box thing and puts it on the countertop on the register, and he's on the phone call, and the cat just comes over and shits in the box while the customer's standing there like, what the hell kind of store is this? The guy wanting to use the bathroom, wanting the better toilet paper, wanting to look at the porn magazine,
which
dying back there, and then his girlfriend who we love, or the girl he loves, comes and has sex with her thinking it was him. And it's like a stand-up comedy routine that doesn't, like, all this happened on one day in this movie. Someone died. When Randall sold the cigarettes to the 4-year-old and gets written up for selling out tobacco to a minor, and how it just like rolls to the punches and everything just happens, all on the same day. And that's the funny thing too, is like, it's not a span of time. It's one day that this all happens on.
And that scene you just said, I think is so funny with the cigarettes and getting the fine, because that's so classic too, because he doesn't get in trouble.
No,
Dante does. And guys like Randall never get in trouble. It's always the other guy that's hanging out with him that's like, damn it. So that was just such a great encapsulation of how that would exactly work.
You never sell cigarettes to a minor. She goes, I didn't. You did. And he's like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. You're right. Yes.
You're right. That was me. That makes sense.
That does sound like me.
Me. Yes, exactly. There was something else that I'm trying to figure out my notes here. There's something else that was great about how it connects to us in the industry that I couldn't remember. I'm trying to see here. I'm looking at my notes to try to figure out what it was. Really good. Stupid questions. Customers asking stupid questions.
Oh God.
How many times at Orner Brewing Company or any place you've worked, the sign on the door says you open at 4:00. It's 3:00 in the afternoon. They walk in the door and ask you if you're open. And after looking at the hours, and the big, huge sign out of the door, it says, I assure you we're open. The door's unlocked. And people open the door and stick their head in and look at Dante and go, you guys open? And how many times, like 4 or 5 times in the movie, he has to say, yes, we're open. And it's just the funniest thing, because I'm like, that hits me right here, because it happens all the freaking time.
The exact same thing as you're saying, same part of that was that I think it's when they go to the funeral, but they're like, dude, it's Saturday at 3 p.m. Nobody's going to come, because nobody ever comes. And they close and 800 people come. And that will happen every single time. You don't ever test that. Like, that will happen. And
the same thing at the movie store when Randall like talking to the dude, the people, and they're like, hey, do you have any new releases? And she's standing directly in front of a sign that says new releases, and arrows pointing this way. And it says, how much is this? And it says 99 cents, and the arrows pointing this way. And it happens all the freaking time. It's just like, you just look and open your eyes and look around you at any place you're at. 99.9% of the time, the answer is there, but people don't want to. They have to ask questions to get their answer. And it's funny, because I'm like, oh my God. And again, maybe that's why it resonates so much more with me nowadays than it would have done, 15, 20 years ago, is because, again, a lot of it just, like, I'm pretty much gonna watch that movie and go, that happens at work. Yeah, that happens at work. Oh yeah, that happens at work. Obviously, no one's died in our bathroom and someone hasn't randomly had sex with them in the bathroom. We haven't sold cigarettes to a minor.
No.
We haven't, whatever, played hockey on the rooftop. We've done that stuff, but like, there's things that in a movie that definitely happen in
Oh,
real
yeah.
life, and it just fascinates the hell out of me as a person who lives that.
Completely different state and everything. But I've seen the person that like gets busted for selling underage, and then you're like, dude, you probably made a mistake, and then you see the person and you're like, you just sold alcohol to a 17-year-old man.
Yep.
And it's that great, even that bit of it where like that person though, like they're always going to do that and they don't care. And they're going to just pay the fine and move on. They're not going to worry about it. They're not going to think about it. It's the Dantes that are going to think about it and worry about it. Yep.
And even though they're not the one that did it, like they actually didn't even do it, and they're thinking about it and worrying about it forever. It's like, you could fight it and I didn't sell those cigarettes. You did. Yeah, that makes sense. That tracks.
Yeah, totally.
That makes sense. But it's again, it stands the test of time in a sense. I think they did do some alternate ending things. Like I mentioned, they changed the ending. They shot a movie a number of years ago now called Shooting Clerks. It's a biopic on Kevin Smith. And it looks fascinating. They did some screeners over the past year. Like 4 years ago, they did some sort of like screener of people, and they're still working on the movie. So that will be a fascinating watch the more stories come out, the more things come out with this Shooting Clerks documentary on the movie Clerks. There was something else that came out, and I couldn't find it anywhere. Taylor and I watched a number of years ago that after we watched the movie, we wanted to watch this thing, and it was about Clerks and some fun things on there. And I was trying to find that out because when we did the TMNT one, last week, we watched the documentary as well to kind of get some input, and I wanted to see if I could find that, but I don't remember where it was or how I got it or whatever it was for that movie Clerks. So, but it'd be pretty cool. So yeah, I love that. I mean, having a conversation with Kevin Smith about Shooting Clerks would be freaking amazing.
Oh my God.
Go ahead.
That's part of my, no, I'm just saying that's part of my joke is I keep asking all these questions, and I want to be like, I want to talk to Kevin Smith about that. Like the movie didn't come out 27 years ago?
Yes.
But yeah, I absolutely right now want to talk to Kevin Smith because I have like a million questions as a 41-year-old that just saw it.
Yes. And that the different aspect of it, because you have these 21-year-olds who are just seeing it for the first time.
Yep, of course.
And because they only could watch it now, like it's not like they could watch it 20 years prior because they weren't alive. But it is I love that aspect that you didn't see it yet, and this is great. The first time seeing it.
I know, and now they're coming to Comic-Con. That's great.
Yeah. And so so the Clerks reunion is October 1st to the 3rd at Bangor Comic Con. I'm excited because they're going to do things together. They're going to take pictures together and do all that stuff there. So it would have been cool to see Kevin Smith come up too, but obviously he goes to big cons as well as he is other stuff going on. He's got his podcast. He's got his stand-up comedy. He's got Shooting Clerks and all like the new Clerks and stuff like that. But having Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson, I mean, they're the stars of the movie. Let's be honest. Veronica comes in and out. Jason Mewes as a speaking part in it. But everybody else is just B characters. The stars are Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson or Dante and Randall. So we're excited to see that. I'm excited to see them at Comic-Con in Bangor.
Me too. And yeah, and if you all haven't heard of this movie called Clerks,
yes,
check it out.
And I didn't write it down. It was on my notes. The Clerks title line on the front of the poster are actual things from different magazines and things. So like the CNO, for example, was from Cosmetology magazine.
Cosmopolitan.
And there was other ones like the R's from a Clark bar, I believe. So it's actually kind of funny. They actually are from things that you might be able to buy at that shop. They're all like they're candy or magazines or something that's available at the shop that he made the letters to the Clerks on it, which is pretty cool.
I wonder if they were from the shop. See, Kevin Smith, we need answers, man.
It's funny too, because if you look at the cover, it's got Dante, it's got Randall, it's got Veronica, I believe, and it's got Kevin Smith on it, but no Jason Mewes, which I thought was funny because actually Jason Mewes has more speaking parts than Kevin Smith does.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say before we start to wrap this up is Kevin Smith put himself back in the movie after cutting himself as Randall. He put himself into Silent Bob so that the movie failed, his face would be on it and he would be part of the movie, that he couldn't just sit in the background and not take the blame. He's like, if he put himself in the movie, you saw who Kevin Smith looked like. So if you ran into him on the street and the movie actually flopped and he was in debt for the rest of his life, that you'd see him on the movie, which I thought, again, it's a cool thing to talk about. Having him have him put his face in the movie. He didn't do it because he wanted to be in the movie. He wanted to do it. So if he failed, he'd be in the movie, which is awesome. otherwise, I think it's a great movie. I think it's worth watching. Again, it's a historical part of it, not just the whether or not you like the movie or not. I think if you go your entire life without seeing the movie, you're missing out because of that historical and cultural and aesthetic significance of it. I mean,
Absolutely.
It's in the Library of Congress, guys. Like, watch the movie. If you're gonna come to Comic-Con in Bangor, watch the movie before you come, because it'd be nice to meet the people that you those people.
Absolutely. And especially, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, and we're getting like the two actors that are like, they're at the center of this. So that's super exciting. So see the movie if you haven't seen it and come to Comic-Con.
And watch Clerks too. I mean, I mean, Adam, you should
absolutely
watch Clerks too. It's fun. It's not the same by any stretch of the imagination, but it's fun. And Rosario Dawson's one of the stars in the set in Clerks too, which is great because I like Rosario Dawson a lot. So,
I do too.
She's a great actor, and it also works a little bit closer to what you and I do because we worked in restaurants and stuff like that. So that actually brings even more things. Like, oh my God, we will not be doing a review of Clerks 2. I just think it's not. We don't need to review every movie, but we just did this one because of the Comic-Con coming up, and we thought you're going to meet these people. We should talk about the movie and discuss the movie, and also forced Adam to watch it before Comic-Con came anyway. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I think it was great. So last week we did the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles review. This week we did Clerks. Next week we'll do something else. But right now, we're not doing reviews of movies every week, but it just seemed like it worked out this way to do that kind of stuff too. But I like them because I think it's fun to have something to talk about and so on. So yeah, make sure you subscribe and rate and review and all that stuff on all of our podcasting platforms, capesandtights.com. I don't know, man. I don't know what else to
get out there. Give us some likes, give us some follows, and send us some comments.
Yes, exactly. And we did a review of Why the Last Man's first 3 episodes. Also as a fun bonus one you can check out there too. If you haven't seen that show, it's pretty cool as well. So yeah, it's fun. I don't know. I'm having fun doing this. We're gonna do some more of these.
I'm having a blast. We got Comic-Con coming. It doesn't get any better.
If you don't like it, I'll pull the hell with Kevin Smith in it. Then don't watch it or don't listen to it. Exactly. We're doing something we like to do, and we're gonna have fun with it. So.
Which brought it full circle because, it's your choice. Yes. Don't blame it on somebody else.
Exactly. Hey, man, appreciate doing this via Zoom again. One day when this world is back in normal situations, quote unquote normal, we'll be in our new studio that we announced on the podcast bonus episode a couple weeks ago. And, we'll be setting that up here pretty soon. But we're excited to be in person in the same place at some point. But right now it's going to be a blast.
We're being safe. Weird? But when we're back together, we're going to have a lot more stuff we can do too on the podcast. It's going to be fun.
Adam and I are both vaccinated and we're also being safe. That's weird, right? I mean, come on.
Crazy, right? Choices.
Choices, man. Yeah, weird, huh? And we're also alive and we're not like Nicki Minaj's cousin or whatever like that with the, shrunken penises and all that. I don't know what's going on there, but we're not like them either. So, but yeah, sweet, man. I'll catch you next week. We're obviously talking between, but this has been Capes and Tights Podcast. I'm Justin.
I'm Adam. Thanks, y'all.
Peace.